How have I not been watching hockey all these years? Wow. So it's basically UFC if the fighters agree to attach knives to their feet and walk out onto a frozen lake. I mean, now that I'm officially a real hockey fan, I want to give a special shout out to our neighbors in the north. Yes, the Canadians. But don't worry, Canadians, I will mark that special shout out as promotional, no declared value. You won't have any problems with tariffs. Aaron Judge and the USA were trouncing Brazil in the World Baseball Classic a little earlier. Yes, both teams have a lot of professional players on their squads. I couldn't figure out which team was which, though. I thought both teams were Japan. Yes, the growing pains have begun. I hope they don't last for too long. I went 2-4 on my picks this past week. 2 hockey games and 4 basketball games. I got 1 hockey game correct and 1 basketball game correct. But give me a chance. I mean, that's kind of how it starts with anything. You get better as you go along. Thankfully the Penguins crushed the Golden Knights of Las Vegas, and that the Celtics were true to form when they beat the 76ers. The Knicks and the Celtics both put up 114 points in their games. They are really looking like the beasts of the East this year. We're going to get into that. We're going to do 6 more picks this week, but we're going to do 3 hockey and 3 basketball. Then I'm just going to talk very briefly because, of course, we have the war going on, or the military action. I'm not sure what they want to deem it or dub it. Either way, it's a very, very trying time for the world right now, really. So let's just get into our pick 6, and then we'll talk a little bit later. It's not going to be too much. After all, this is a sports show now. Hey, the pick 6 is back again. Thanks for tuning in for it. We've got 1 basketball game on Saturday with 2 hockey games, and we've got 1 hockey game on Sunday with 2 basketball games. That's how we're going to do it. And we're starting off right away, bright and early, 9:30 a.m. Saturday morning. And it's the Capitals against the Bruins. Yes, the Washington Capitals against the Boston Bruins. You're going to notice that all 3 hockey games I pick here, the teams are doing at about 66%, a little bit less in some cases, maybe a little bit more. But they're winning 2/3 of their games, which is pretty good. These are teams that are going to be playoff bound, that they're going to be vying for the Stanley Cup, Lord Stanley's Cup, as it were. So in the Capitals Bruins, I'm going to go ahead and pick the Boston Bruins. I love what the Bruins are doing. Yeah, that's a cheesy little rhyme. But the Capitals are doing well too, but I'm going to go ahead and pick the Bruins in this game to win. We're not picking scores. We're not picking overs and unders. We're not picking any of that type of stuff. Overs and unders in hockey? Well, I guess they have one probably. Still need to do a little more research on basketball and hockey betting, because I got pretty good at football this past season, if you've been watching the show for a while. But now it's time for basketball, and pretty soon we're going to have baseball again, which is exciting. I was picking baseball games this past season. Anyway, enough about that. The Bruins are going to beat the Capitals, and it's a 9:30 a.m. game. Right away, 10, some of us aren't even awake at that hour. Next, we've got a basketball game starting off at high noon, where the Orlando Magic face the Minnesota Timberwolves. Yeah, the Magic come into town 33-28. But the Timberwolves are doing a little bit better than that. They're 40-23. Still, the Magic just came off of beating the Mavs and the Wizards. I'm going to go ahead and pick the Magic to win over the Timberwolves. Again, no scores. I'm not trying to pick scores here. We're just doing winners as far as basketball and hockey is concerned. I don't know if they call that the money. See, I don't know much about betting in basketball and hockey. Last but not least, for Saturday, we've got the 2:30 p.m. game. It's the Flyers and the Penguins. This is going to be big. Boy, oh boy. The Penguins are doing really well. The Flyers just traded Delarier, I think his name is, to the Hurricanes. Um, I got to go with the Penguins. You know, they're not doing me wrong so far. Pittsburgh Penguins. It seems like it might be their year. You never know. I think Pittsburgh Penguins are going to go pretty far here. So that's it for Saturday. We've got the Orlando Magic against the T-Wolves. We've got the Bruins over the Capitals, and we've got the Penguins over the Flyers. I should have listed the Bruins first since that is the morning game. All right. We're getting better. We're trying. Can't get any worse. Sunday, 10 a.m., we've got the Celtics at the Cavaliers. Now, I'm a little more versed in basketball than I am hockey. But we're going to try to change that here because hockey's exciting. I got to tell you, did you guys see that fight between, what's his name, Robertson and, oh gosh, something Henny or I'm not sure. It was the Mighty Ducks, and he got the best of the guy. It's interesting watching them fight on the ice. It really is. I mean, I can't even stand up on the ice, let alone fight. So I'm going to pick the Cavaliers over the Celtics. Why? You know, both teams are on a winning streak, but Donovan Mitchell participated in practice this week because of the layoff, the long layoff for the Cavaliers. I think they're going to beat the Celtics. Look, the Celtics are doing really well. As far as I'm concerned, that could be the Eastern Conference champion right there in Boston. But it's a long season, and there's quite a number of ups and downs. We're picking Cleveland, 10 a.m. Sunday. All right, next we've got the 12:30 p.m. game, and that's going to be the Knicks at the Lakers. Ooh, look at this, New York at L.A. New York doing okay. They're 40-23 on the season. Lakers 37-25. They're kind of holding it together. Luka Doncic and LeBron. So of course, we talked about this last week. It's been reported that they're not getting along. LeBron questioning some of his decisions on the court. Luka feeling, like he ended up in the wrong situation maybe. But still, they managed to beat the Holy Tar out of this past week, right? When they beat Golden State. That's what I get for picking against my favorite team. Nonetheless, we're going to pick the Knicks to beat the Lakers in LA. Yes, I think they're going to come to the Crypto Arena and they're going to beat the Lakers. Look, LeBron just broke the record for field goals, passing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Congratulations, LeBron. But it just doesn't feel like it's going to be their type of season this year. I could be wrong, but there's a lot of tough teams, especially in the East. We're picking the Knicks over the Lakers. Last but not least, it's the hockey game on Sunday, 4 p.m. And it's coming to you from the Prudential Center from Newark, New York. No, Newark, New Jersey. I'm sorry. Boy, that's awful. Newark, New Jersey, yes. The Red Wings at the Devils. David Perron returns to the Red Wings. Apparently they got one of their players back. This ought to be interesting. We're going to go with Detroit to come into Jersey and beat the Devils. That's just the way it's going to be. Sorry, Red Bar, or what is it, Red Bank, New Jersey. Did I say Red Bar? Out loud? Wonder where that guy's been. All right, check your local listings for all the games. Those are our picks for this week. So we've got the Magic over the Timberwolves on Saturday. We've got the Bruins over the Capitals and the Penguins over the Flyers. For Sunday, we've got the Cavs over the Celtics. And we got the Knicks over the Lakers. And to finish off the week, 4 p.m. on Sunday, we're looking for the Red Wings to come into town and beat the Devils in Newark. Frank Sinatra was from Newark. That doesn't matter. Don't forget, gamble responsibly. And I'm going to take a little sip of coffee, even though the white mug affects the brightness in here. It's not really a professional studio. I'm really getting bad. I have to. When I see what I've got to work with here, I've got to do a lot better. So let's talk about what's going on. Obviously, we're in a state of war. We're in a state of military action against Iran. And I go, into my own references, of course, and think about my dad and how he went to Vietnam and fought there. You know, it's very interesting, but then I don't want to make it about myself. So I'm just going to go ahead and say that I'm not going to say much about it at all. Why? Because I think during times of war, people say a lot of things and think a lot of things. They call that the fog of war. You don't really know what's going on. Everything is fluid. Everything is fluid. So speaking at that time, or making any kind of points, or trying to make any kind of points, can feel, when it's all said and done, like you were throwing a dart at a moving dartboard. You know, not only is the dartboard moving in front of you side to side, but it's spinning as it moves. So your odds of landing any points are not that good. You know, it's a very fluid time. You know, we don't know one way or another. Information changes immediately. I just, my heart goes out to everybody who's been killed. You know, and also support our troops, because, you know, they're going to be far from their loved ones. They're going to be fighting fighting for our country. I guess. I mean, like, again, I don't know. I'm not one to speak about that kind of stuff anymore. This is a sports show. By the way, the Raiders traded away Max Crosby, their defensive end. You know, huge news out of Vegas. Apparently, Dallas and who was it? Dallas and the Lions were left out of the deal. The Raiders got a pretty good deal out of it. They got number 14 this year in the draft, plus some top trades next year, which is what they need. You know, the Raiders need to think in a developmental manner. They need to think about the future. Hey, Eckhart, think about the future. Anyway, the Raiders, they need to basically become a farm club, like in baseball. You know, they got to pull young talent that won't be easily persuaded to go elsewhere, is the only way I know how to do it. You know, instead of 5-star athletes, they should round up a bunch of 4- and 3-star athletes, is what I'm saying. Why? Because once they develop them, they will play just as well as a 5-star athlete, or at least as effectively. It's a long way of saying that the Raiders need to develop their team. Just win, baby. Right? If it were that simple. The Rams signed Cam Curl to a 3-year deal. I think he's a safety out there in Inglewood. $36 million for 3 years. Boy, that's a good one. Cam Curl signed by the Rams. That's good news. Perspective, folks. We need perspective on things. You know, it's awful when people get bombed. It's awful when people get taken hostage. It's awful when, you know, they did that to us. We do that to them. I mean, back and forth. It's an atrocity. I'm not a fan of war. That's why I never went into the military. I don't like violence. I'm not a fan of violence. But I do respect our military, and I want to give a special shout out to them, all the men and women overseas and here also who are guarding the home front. Never forget the home front, folks. You know. Anyway, let's enjoy the sports this weekend and try to keep our minds off of everything. But of course, it's going to be difficult to do. Be sure to check all your local listings as far as the games are concerned. But I mean, let's be honest. Check your pirated apps as well, right? All right, we're going to wrap up this show. I think that's it. Thanks again for tuning in. Hit that like, hit that subscribe button. It's been fun getting into this hockey and basketball. I need to spend a little more time, watch some more games, if I can get away from work for a while. We'll see how it goes. You guys enjoy this weekend.